Oh, my friend, the ego, whew, the ego is the enemy. Yes, yes, the ego is the devil. Satan, Lucifer, Seth, um, whatever name you want to establish to that dark side, yes, that is always the ego. The ego is Dark Vader. The ego is Lord Voldemort. The ego is it, the clown. The ego is what other thing? The ego is what else? What other billion? The Joker. Yes, my friend, the ego is the Joker. Hey, are you just not tired of hearing how bad the ego is? Let's be honest. I have been part of spiritual communities like for 7 years now, and I have been studying different religions, different spiritual paradigms for almost 10 years now. And always, 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 we find a representation of our ego in these paradigms. And always that representation is that the ego sucks and that you should be going away from the ego and that you should combat and fight and conquer your ego, that you should transcend the ego, because only by doing that you can become the whole, you can become integrous again, you can become authentic again, you can be in grace, in salvation, in nirvana, in an awake consciousness, in an awakened consciousness. Always is the same story. But the real question here, folks, is that is this really the case? It is the ego that bad? It is only bad? Or the ego can have some benefits? Or the ego can have some angels? What is the truth? It's a very complex question. And definitely we are going to deconstruct that question today here, and we are going to try to find a definitive answer, because let's be honest, most psychologists, they don't want to destroy the ego. Carl Jung was a very famous psychologist, psychiatrist, and mystic, and he was always a defender of the ego. Sigmund Freud, defender of the ego. He said that the ego was the organizational element of the psyche. Without it, you are just a beast. And so many others, Horney, Adler, psychologists, famous thinkers, philosophers, they always have defend the ego. So what is the truth then? Is the ego bad? Or is the ego good? It is a monster or is a god? What is it? Well, let's see. Let's see. What do you think? What do you think? Because I have been guilty of this also. I have made a couple of episodes or videos in Spanish mostly about how bad the ego is and how urgent it is for us to transcend it. But I was right or I was wrong. Well, my friend, if this question interests the profundity of your soul, stay tuned, because today we are going to know the angels of the ego. Welcome, my friend, to the most transformational podcast in the world, the Mastermind Podcast Challenge Season 2 with your host, Dr. Derek Israel, and this is the episode 544. We are here every Monday through Friday, approximately 4 a.m. MST. And hey, join us if you want to see an episode every day that will transform your life. All right. This specific episode of the Angels of the Ego is a part one because tomorrow we are going to discuss the demons of the ego. So today I will try to concentrate in the benefits of the ego, in the things that no one else is talking about, the virtues of having an ego. And tomorrow we're going to see more the typical things that we can associate with evilness in relation to the ego. So part one is going to be angels of the ego. Part two is going to be demons of the ego. And these two episodes were requested. This was a special request of one of our members in the mastermind group that we have for free on Telegram. His name is Juanqui, and he's an awesome student. He has been working with me for years now. And I asked the group, hey, what type of subjects do you want me to bring to the podcast? And he answered, hey, I would like to see what benefits we can have with ego and also what disadvantages we can have with the ego. So I was like, oh, that is kind of a nice question. So I was pondering that question. I was meditating that question for a month. And now I finally realized these episodes. So thank you, Juanqui, for the request. If you want to join our group and to have special benefits like that, well, just go to the description below and there's is the link for the Telegram group. But let me tell you something a little bit about the history of the ego. Man, the history of the ego, oh my gosh. If we have a billion in existence, definitely it is the ego. That is the real billion in existence. And you may say, no, Derek, is not the ego. The real billion is Satan or Mara in Buddhism or Shaitan in Muslim. You know, Derek, that representation of evilness, that is the real enemy. What, like we have God and we have the demon. That the demon is the enemy. Yes, that's true. And the demon is your ego. It is the same thing. It is not separate. We have always created stories and myths about this beast, about this thing that is always in the gates of hell, waiting to us, waiting for us to sin, waiting for us to fail, waiting for us to fall in the trap. But that is the ego. The whole stories, the whole myths is always a representation of the spiritual journey of men and women. What is the spiritual journey? That we can always fuse with absolute consciousness or with God or with our highest potential. We can merge with that. We can select that. We can decide that, or we can decide to merge and to be and to operate as our lower self, our inferior self, the beast, the devil, Seth, the demon, the enemy. So in the spiritual community, it's so common, man, to demonize the ego. It's like ego demonizing ego. It's like demon is a demon saying that the other thing is a demon. You notice this trap? This is a trap. And when you say, oh, yes, I'm so enlightened, man, I just transcended the ego. What is that? That is your ego. Do you understand this? Do you understand this? It's very, very tricky. The ego is a master manipulator. And notice what I'm doing here. I'm attacking the ego again because this is just so normal for me to do because, hey, this is the enemy. And everything in life, in existence, folks, everything works in contrast. Like you cannot have digital if you don't have zeros and one. You cannot have differentiating color if you don't have black and white. Between black and white, you have all the other colors. But we need to have the contrast. So we need to have a God and we need to have an ego. So it's very common for us, spiritual gurus and spiritual teachers, to refer to the ego as an instrument for teaching. Because we can say, if you meditate, you're going to be in this state. And you can ask yourself, oh, wow. But if you don't meditate, you're going to be in this state, like the ego. Notice? And you can say, oh, yeah, I don't want to be in this state. I want to be in this other state. And for your brain, it's easier to understand philosophies like that, with contrast, with opposites. So, yes, the ego, sadly enough, has been the victim of the spiritual community for millennia right now. And it's not like the ego is perfect, and it's not like the ego doesn't have any guilt. At the end of the day, this is just a social construction, but what it represents definitely have some of the guilt, because the ego, when a person is possessed by his ego, as we are going to discuss tomorrow in the episode of the demons of the ego, well, we can create very horrible things, and we all know that. But let's focus today in what are good things about the ego. Because at the end of the day, if we are doing personal development here, if we are progressing, if we are evolving, we need to use all the resources that we have at our disposal. And our ego, ladies and gentlemen, is a resource. Yes, you will understand this in this episode. All right. So what I call angels basically is virtues. I will do a separate episode in the futures about, how can I say, the real essence of angels. I have been studying angels for a while now. It has been very difficult for me to understand what the hell are angels. But for this episode, I will not go very deep into what is an angel. But I just want to say for this episode that we can compare angels with virtues, or with positive traits, or with ideal traits or characteristics that we can develop in life in order to be more sophisticated and spiritually advanced. So angels are benefits or perks or virtues, and we are going to discuss right now a list that is representative of the virtues of or angels of the ego. So, what is the first angel or benefit of your ego, my friend? Look at this one. This is a huge one. And almost no spiritual guru speak about this one. The ego gives you a sense of continuity. It's a difficult word for me to pronounce. Continuity. Basically, it's the sense of having a permanent kind of existence, or a solid reality, right? Like Albert Einstein used to say, reality is so constant that's why we think it is real. He didn't say exactly those words. I am paraphrasing here, but it's kind of the same thing. The ego is so constant, so continuous in your life, like you wake up every day and you have the same ego. Well, you don't have the same ego. Yes, you change your ego in every instant with every thought, like you change a little bit your ego. But notice your ego have a certain kind of continuity, a, a consistency. Like you woke up today feeling like you are yourself, and yesterday you woke up feeling like you are yourself, and probably tomorrow you will wake up feeling like you are yourself. So yes, you may change a little bit, but in your essence, in your most basic ego structure, you are kind of the same man or woman. Just notice that. And that is huge, because if we eradicate the ego, then you don't have oh my man, this word continuity in your life. Continuity. You don't have consistency in your identity. And then it will be very difficult for you to organize who you are. So your ego gives you a solid identity. So you may be very spiritual, but when I ask you who you are, you may say, "Oh, I am Roberto this and that, and I am a very strong man, I'm a very strong leader. I'm a very compassionate being. I am a servant. I serve others." Notice all of that is ego. And you may say, "No, it is not ego. I am saying to you that I am a servant. I am selfless. I am not saying that I am this or that. I am saying it in a very selfless way. It is not ego. No, no, it is ego. It is ego because it's part of your identity. If you don't have ego, I can ask you who you are, and you will be like, without any type of language, without any type of organization, without any type of identity. I will recommend you a movie that changed my life. Right now, in this exact day, today is 4th of May, 2022, is on theaters, so you can go to the cinema and watch it. But maybe you will see this in the future. So just go into the internet and watch it. I don't care what year it is, just watch this movie. You will understand a lot of the angels of the ego with this movie. And this movie, it is called, let me just be sure, but I think it is called All Happening at Once. Let me just double check. No, 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 no. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. That is the real title. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. This is one of the greatest movies that I have seen in my entire life and illustrate the reality of the ego. Because I don't want to spoil you a lot, but what is happening is that this woman, she is basically involuntarily collapsing into the different realities that compose the multiverse, in which every decision that you do opens a new multiverse, right? And you are not noticing because you have an ego, a solid, a continuous ego that is in this specific multiverse, in this specific reality, that you can just continue your life without noticing that you are existing in parallel in infinite possibilities that we call the superposition in quantum physics. And we know by quantum physics that we are non-local, that we are global, multiversal, and that everything is happening at the same time because time doesn't even exist separate of space or separated of consciousness, because only exists what you observe. So basically, the ego in this multiverse theory, the ego serves you to stay in this universe. Just imagine in the woman in the movie, if you are like her, you will be like, you are here right now, and then you blink, boom, and you are in another reality. It is you, but in another reality, in another universe. If you don't have an ego that is solid here, you will be lost in your all possibilities. You will be jumping to the future, to the past, to the present, to this realm, to this other realm, and you will be all over the place. And you may say, Derek, but that is exactly what happened to my cousin, and he's in a psychiatric hospital. Yes, yes, completely agree. I don't think that most people is crazy. I think that no one is crazy. I call that singularity of mind, and it's a book that I'm writing, and my whole dissertation on clinical psychology was about this idea. I think that no one is crazy. Everyone is right. But that doesn't mean that everyone has an ego that is organized and solid enough to stay pragmatical in this multiverse, in this moment, in this reality. So a lot of psychiatric patients, what they have is a very disorganized ego that is jumping all over the quantum world. And we say, oh, that is schizophrenia. Well, That is also a social construction. We can call that if you want, but that doesn't mean that he has that. We can call that schizophrenia. We can call that dementia. We can call that a dissociative personality, or he's a splitted personality. You can say whatever, and you can medicate the hell out of that person. But that doesn't mean that what that person is living is not real. Just because you cannot observe what that person is living, just because you cannot see the shadows, the demons, the angels, the multiverses, the dragons, or whatever that psychotic person is seeing, that doesn't mean that thing do not exist. That only means that you cannot see it. And this comes from a clinical psychologist. I know what I'm telling you. So the ego at least keeps you organized in this structure of existence. Now you may say, but Derek, it is not a dream of us, the spiritual seekers, to be able to be multiversal like that, and to be able to collapse all of the possible realities in our phenomenology, in our body, in our consciousness. It is not that enlightenment. It is not that the ultimate healing of all the possibilities. Yes, it is. But I don't know if your ego it is ready to do that. That's why Carl Jung, he said in one of his book, I think it was in Men and His Symbols, he said, enlightenment or illumination or the transcendence of the ego, it is not something that I recommend people to do before, 50 years old. And it was like, when I read that, I had like 20, I was in my third year or fourth year of bachelor. I have like 22, and I was so pissed. I was like, my ego, was like, what? No, Carl Jung, I want to transcend it now. I don't want to wait until I am 50 years old. I want to transcend my ego now. I want to be enlightened now. Why the hell I need to wait? And now I understand. Because if you are an adolescent and you tap into the infinite potentialities of the multiverse, without a solid ego that can basically address this experience, you can go nuts. Yes, you can go nuts. Just imagine. Just imagine. So, yeah, I don't think that he was right that you need to be 50, but I think that you should have kind of a maturity in your ego in order to sustain truth and light. And for more information about what is light, just search my podcast titled Luminosity, What is Spiritual Light? It's one of my most important episodes so far. The second angel of the ego is that the ego gives you a sense of growth and personal development. Oh, Derek, I love you, Derek. Oh, thank you. Why? Because you have taught me the importance of personal development. And I didn't know that term before. I have fallen in love with that term before because of you. You know how many people have said that to me? And I'm like, oh, thank you. But notice, personal development is just ego work. Yes, that is a hard truth to swallow. But this is just ego work, man. This is just ego work. Just deconstruct the phrase personal development. What are you saying? It is a development, right? It's a growth. It is a growth, but it's personal. And personal come from person, and person come from individual. And what is to be individual is to be an ego, because ego is differentiation, as I will be discussing in the next point. But the fact that you're a person is just suggesting that you are an ego. So the fact that you think that you are growing that type of a person or that entity that we can call myself, the fact that you think that you are growing is thanks and a product of the ego. So the whole personal development industry, it is based on ego mechanics. Uh-oh. Yes. That's why I say personal development, this is awesome. Hey, this is my life purpose. I love this industry. I am writing books about it, and I am doing a podcast about it, almost with 600 episodes so far. But this is not the end of the road, folks. The end of the road is, yes, personal transcendence. Like, you need to transcend the ego. So you need to remove personal development and become and turn into universal kind of development or universal beingness. It's more appropriate or more, yeah, it's more correct. The all, which is the opposite of the ego, right? It is not the opposite, but it's the contrast, let's say. The all, if you are not your ego, what you are, well, you are a spirit. If you are a spirit, what you are, well, you are all. You are God. You are infinite consciousness. You are the universe. That thing never grows. Never grows because it is already all. If you are all, right? If you are complete, if you are total, you cannot grow. You cannot evolve. You see this? You cannot sophisticate because you are already everything. So in a sense, you are never growing, folks. In a sense, this is just this work. This is just an illusion of the ego. So the ego is the one that is thinking that is growing because in your essence, you are never growing. You are never evolving. You are never progressing. You are just being. You are just, you just are. But the ego say, oh, yes, I'm growing. Look, I am more compassionate. Oh, yes, I am more flexible now. Oh, yes, I have more resilience now. That is just the ego, and that feels good, right? Yes, it feels good. It's one of our primary motivations. It is one of the primary motivations of your ego to develop, to grow, to expand, to conquer. But at the end of the day, it is ego. Just notice. The next one is that the ego gives you or help you to organize your spiritual forces. You can interpret your ego as an organizative or organizational element in your existence. You can organize stuff with your ego. You can organize behavior. Like, it is my ego, the only one that is stopping Derek Israel to remove his shirt right now and start dancing like a stripper in this podcast. Yes. Yes. If I didn't have an ego, why not? Why I cannot do a stripper right now? A strip. A stripper, no. Why I cannot dance like a stripper right now? Well, because my ego will say, okay, Derek, stop right there. You're a professional. And it is not that strippers are not professional. Sorry, I didn't want to say that. They are professional, um, but it is not my profession. That is what I wanted to say, Derek. That is not your profession, and it will not be professional. That if you are doing, philosophy, psychology in a formal, serious podcast that thousands of very intellectual people follow and hear and study and introspect, and then you're gonna start doing a strip. People is not watching you for that. Maybe some of them want to see it. You want to see it? Leave it in a comment below. But most people, they don't want to see that. Most people are coming here because they want to know more about the mechanics of the ego. So my ego is preventing me, is organizing my behavior right now. This whole podcast, it is only possible because I have an ego. The ego is organizing the computer, the lights, the consistency of the color, the brand, the name, my name. This is me. Hey, Dr. Derek Israel is me. My ego, this thing here, this is Derek Israel. This is our organization. Notice, existence is organized. If not, you will be living, just imagine like an infinite ball of randomness, changing color with every sound that exists, with every odor that exists, assuming different forms every time, a new form, new form, new form. And I have an episode that is called The Law of the New. Please search that episode. It will change your life. It is called The Law of the New. And in that episode, I teach you about this law, the law of innovation, how everything is always forever changing. But if you don't have an ego, you will be subject to the law of the new in a very uncontrollable way. Uncontrollable. Like you cannot control it, you cannot manage it, and you will be just a mess, a disorganized, how do you say that? A catatonic kind of disorganization. You know, catatonia is a very advanced stage in schizophrenia, mostly, in which people are so splitted that clinically, I am not saying that they are splitted spiritually. Remember what I was saying, that most psychiatric disorders are just misunderstandings. But in a clinical perspective, they are splitted. And if you see like a catatonic, let me just share the screen with you, because I know that most of you are not psychologists, and I am referring to a very high kind of so look, if you're watching this episode on video in Spotify or YouTube, you will be able to benefit of the visuals. But here, this is a person that is with catatonia. Just notice, she have a rigid body, rigid face. They are like lost in their own mind. Sometimes they assume very, very difficult postures. Look, this one. And this is a very sad state, folks. When you are here, you are in a very bad place. Look, this one. Oh my God, this is huge. Look, this pose. And people stay like that for years. And I have my ideas of what is happening. I will not, I will not go into there in this podcast, but yeah, it's sad, right? So that is for me like one of the most powerful examples of being disorganized. You're catatonic, you are you are so disorganized that you cannot even move, right? So the ego helps you to organize different forces of your spirit: language, compassion, imagination. Just imagine if your imagination is not organized. You will be imagining like the Inception movie. You will be in the dreams, in your dreams every day. And if you don't have any psychological structure that can like manage that and orient you in this physical reality that we are in this three dimension, you will be fucked. Right? You will be fucked. So thanks your ego, man. Thanks your ego that is organizing everything in your existence. That is one of his angels. Fourth one is that the ego gives you a sense of individuality and differentiation. I already promised you this one, and this is one that will help you a little bit, but then you need to transcend this, obviously. But it's so difficult to progress and to move in life if you don't develop a sense of individuality, because when you are born, you are all. You are not individual. You are your mother, you are your father, you are the world, you are the heaven, you are the hell, you are the heat, you are the cold, everything. The baby doesn't have an ego developed. That is developed in year number 2 to 3 in those years. Like you start developing your ego, but from a couple of months to 1 year or maybe 2 years, you have no ego. So you are everything. But if you are everything, again, you can become disorganized. So you need to become individual in order to say, okay, this computer is a computer and I am I. Dr. Derek Israel is Dr. Derek Israel, and I am not Dr. Derek Israel. I am not the nose of Dr. Derek Israel. I am definitely not the booty of Dr. Derek Israel. I am myself, and he's himself, and he's individual because he has an ego. He has something that he's thinking that he's individual just like me, that I am thinking that I am individual, so I can suppose that everyone else have this thing, this person inside his mind, this ego. And this help us to differentiate from everything else in the universe. And this helps us to navigate until we have maturity, to understand that we are all in the universe, but at the same time, we are individual. Because just notice, if you don't reach this maturity, you will be just walking one day as Friedrich Nietzsche. This happened to Friedrich Nietzsche. He was walking one day and then someone killed a horse, or I don't know if they kill a horse or they punched the horse in the mouth. I don't know. Or they did something violent to the horse. And Friedrich Nietzsche, he's the most brilliant man of history, in my opinion. Most brilliant man on history. He was so enlightened. He was so supreme in consciousness. Yes, he has some defects. Yes, I know. But he was so supreme in certain aspects of his thoughts that he got over it identified with the horse, and he collapsed in the streets because someone mistreated violently this horse, and he collapsed in the street and he lost his mind forever. Just look that story, and you may say, why he was so impressed and devastated? Because he knew that he was the horse. He was united with everything in existence. So but he didn't have the ego maturity in order to sustain that you know So you need the ego maturity in order to understand that yes, you are all, and that means that you are Hitler, for example. That is a hard truth to swallow. Yes, you, in your essence, you are the same as Hitler. You are one with Hitler. You are one with Vladimir Putin. You are one with Mussolini. You are one with the guy that raped the small child. That is shadow work. But what is shadow work? Well, shadow work basically means to enlarge your ego in a level that can assume the darkness of the world, the darkness of the universe, because you are the darkness. So yes, just notice how important it is to have the maturity of the ego in order to understand that you are the all, but you cannot get overwhelmed by being the all. It's a very profound teaching, what I'm trying to transfer you here. Are you getting it? The next angel of the ego, give me just a second. Let me organize this sticky note here. The next angel of the ego is that help you to contain your desires in specific objects, and that keeps you pragmatic. Because desire, this is another subject, and this is a debate. This is a constant debate. It is desire ego or not? This is a constant debate. A lot of spiritual gurus, they say yes, ego brings desire, because you can only desire what you want, and you have to be a you. If you want something, there must be a you, right? But other spiritual gurus will say no. Desire, this is a feature of the metaphysical reality. Desire, this is something that transcends ego. Existence desires. You don't desire. existence desire, and desire is will, and will is just supreme. It is a metaphysical feature. It is something that is beyond. It is a meta you. So you cannot not desire. You will always desire. You will always be driving towards something. So this is a debate. But I don't know what you believe. I really believe that desire is more, I really believe that desire transcends the ego. But at the same time, the ego helps you to desire a constant thing. And you can have ambition due to this angel or this benefit of your ego. Because if not, you will have like a general desire and you will desire everything. And if you desire everything, you desire nothing. You understand this? If you desire everything, you desire nothing. But the ego say, I don't desire everything. I don't desire to be a lawyer. I don't desire to be a teacher. I don't desire to be a singer. I don't desire to be everything that I can be. I just desire to be a accountant. That is my desire. So notice how your ego helped you to desire a specific thing that can help you to orient your behavior to go to a university and say, I don't want to be everything else. I just want to be an accountant. And you can put yourself in a class about accountability, right? Or how do you say that? It's not accountability, maybe, or finances, or taxes, or whatever. What, what the things that an accountant do. But it's the ego that help direct your desire. It's your ego. The next point is that your ego keeps your spirit relentless. Oh, this is a huge one. What I mean, well, the ego is relentless. Relentless. We know that. In Buddhism, they compare the ego as what? With a crazy monkey mind, right? Like a monkey. It's always talking, 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 talking. Your ego never shuts up. Shut up, right? Your ego is always talking. It's always saying something. And that's why, in the spiritual community, we teach you how to be the observant of the ego. Because sometimes you get overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed with that monkey in our mind. But notice that relentlessness of your ego, it also making accountable to your spirit to be relentless as well. Because if you, as a spiritual being, if you are not kind of connecting with it in a very profound way, then you will be consumed by your ego. And your whole existence is the balance between your spiritual forces and your egoic forces, like having a dynamic, dancing with each other. Sometimes you're a little bit more egoic, and then you go back a little bit more spiritual and selfless, and then a little bit more egoic, and then a little bit more selfless. And in that dynamic, you kind of evolve and you kind of change the world. But if your spirit is not relentless, you will become a demon. You will become an egoic man, a very egoic man. And we know those characters, right? You can see those egos in their faces. They're like, one of my favorite ego is Donald Trump. I download his ego yesterday in the last episode in my mini series, Downloading the Mind. You can search that episode. It is called Think and Win Big Like Trump. Think, think and win big like Trump. And he's one of my favorite egos. Now, in that episode, I told you, hey, he's an ego. And we are downloading some of the notes of the software of his mind, but be with a meta perspective and with awareness that he's an ego. So if you get unbalanced in your spiritual relentlessness versus your ego relentlessness, you can become a Trump, a very powerful ego. But notice how Trump personality is missing a spiritual essence. So in this sense, I will say that if Trump wants to progress in his evolution, he must be more relentless in his spiritual pursuit. But probably he will never do it, right? Because he's so solidified in his ego. So that is kind of a demon of the ego. Notice. So that's why you must keep relentless. How do you keep relentless? Well, meditating every day, praying every day, reading sacred books every day, doing mindfulness every day, Tai Chi, Kung Fu, yoga, martial arts, detachment, practicing everything that I teach you, every spiritual technique, compassion, self compassion techniques, all the things that will enhance the capacity of connection and merging with your spirit. You must be relentless. If you conform, your ego will win the war and you will become an ego. You will become a demon. The next point is that the ego showed you the way to enlightenment. Wow, this is so powerful, but that is so true, man. Because how you become enlightened? How you become enlightened? Well, you purify. You purify your soul. You purify your ego. So, thanks to your ego, you can become enlightened. You can become spirit. So, you may know that you are a very egoistical kind of person, or maybe you are very paranoid. Then you know, okay, if I purify my paranoia and if I purify my egoic desires, I may be enlightened. So the ego gave you a clue of what is your next stage of evolution and what traits do you need to work and develop in order to be a more conscious being. So it's the liabilities of your ego, the weaknesses of your ego that are a portal for evolution and sophistication. you know Back in the day, and I still am working with this, but back in the day I was a person, I was an individual that always I was always feeling rejected, by other people and by myself. So that was a thing in my own journey that I had to work with. So I knew that that was on my ego. So I knew that that was the way then to transcend the ego. So by working with my feelings of rejection, by meditating on those, by healing those, by talking about those with a therapist or with a coach or with my wife, by embarking the journey of healing that certain aspect of my ego, I spiritualize my consciousness a little bit better. You know, so your weaknesses or your character deficits in your ego level become the portal for new evolutions. Another danger of the ego is that the ego can become the universe. And this is a very powerful teaching that I will be doing a specific episode about this, maybe next week or maybe the next one. Let me see. I already have, the whole month, the next 4 weeks design. Only the individuals that are on my Telegram group, they know all the schedule. So if you want to know the schedule, before it's official, go to my Telegram group, join us. It's free. And here I have, yeah, it's not next week, it is the week after that one. And it's an episode that it will be called The Universal Ego. One day, I have told you this before, I asked a guru in India, how can I transcend the ego? And he told me, you can't. You can only turn your ego into the universe. You can only universalize your ego. You cannot eliminate your ego. You cannot eliminate the ego. You can only make it the universe. And I was like, oh. So yeah, my friend, the fact that you have an ego gives you the possibility of becoming the universe in your identity. And if you become the universe in your identity, then you can become a more compassionate man, a more compassionate woman. You can become more like a leader because you will know that you are everything, but with the maturity that demands this truth. And then you can serve the universe well because you are serving yourself well. And yourself, it is the no self because there is no one there. So you will be living in a universal ego of everything and nothingness at the same time. And that we can call beauty. When you are everything and nothing, we can call that beauty. It is beautiful to be that way. When you love, but you don't need to love, that is beauty. When you have sex, but you are not identified with the pleasure or the sex, that is beauty. When you can do art and you are not identified with the art because you are everything and nothing at the same time, that is beauty. You see? So the ego as a person gives you the possibility to become the ego as the universe, and then business start for you. Real change, pro-social attitudes, pro-social behaviors. And we need more politicians that is like this. For more on that, just search and hear and watch my one of the most important episodes that is called How to Raise Your Political Consciousness. How to Raise Your Political Consciousness, Mastermind Podcast. Because we need more politicians that understand that they are the universe and not just a human. Because when you understand that you are the whole thing, you will care for the whole thing and you will not be only focusing on the interest of your own organization. You will be focusing of the whole in the whole system. And we can call those more like supra-conscious politicians. How many of those we have in the world? I don't know. Very few, maybe. If we are lucky, 3, if we are lucky. But yeah, that is what I think, we need to evolve socially and politically to select in our democracy these kind of leaders in the future and more importantly in the present. So let's continue with the other angel of the ego. Is that your ego give you a pragmatical sense of reality, of what is real and what is not. What is real or what is not. So let's say that you are about to take an exam. So you are there sitting about to take an exam, and then you hear a thought that says you will fail this exam. And you're like, who the hell said that? Oh, it was myself. It was a thought. Okay. But how you can know if that is real or not? You may say, no, Derek, that is not real. That is not myself. I will not fail this exam. That is just a limiting belief. That is just a belief that is based on my fear. And I hear the belief and I listen to it, but I will not follow its advice and I will just stay relaxed and I will, execute on the exam and I will pass the exam. But notice, what was the thing that said that you will fail your exam? Your ego. And what was the thing that said that no, that is not real? I will pass this exam. That was a limiting belief. What was that? Your ego. So your ego is always trying to make sense of what is real and what is not, depending what is in your best interest. So just notice or just imagine that if you will believe everything that your mind said, how you will know what is real and what is not. So maybe you are in a public place and you hear, oh, everyone is watching me. That is a very common thought. You don't need to be paranoid to have that thought, and you are like, oh, everyone is watching me, I will watch them back. And you start doing like this, like a crazy beast. Don't watch me. How you will understand that no one is watching you? Well, your ego, hopefully, if it is healthy, right? If it is not corrupt or paranoid, your ego will say, no, no, no. Hey, relax, man. No one is watching you. That is just a normal social behavior. You are self conscious right now. Stop doing that. Become mindful. No one is watching you. Everything is good. That is not real. Because, come back to reality. That is your ego. So your ego helps you to be more pragmatic and more functional in this reality because it gives you a sense of what is real and what is not. You see, this is a very important element. And the final element is that it's a very complex element, but the ego gives you a sense of transitions, a sense of a beginning, a sense of an end, and a sense of unstable, unsustainable motivation and capacity for identification. So there's a lot here. Let's go one by one. So the ego gives you a sense of transitions, like a beginning or an end. And this gives us a certain peace because you think that you was born and you think that you are going to die. Those are transitions. But if you are out of your ego and you are everything and you are spirit, you are one with God, you are never born and you never die. You are just eternal. But you think that you are born and you think that you are going to die. So that is just your ego thinking. Notice this. It is only the ego what is going to die, and your body. And your body is your ego. But your spirit, it will never die. But imagine if you are just thinking, oh my God, I have been existing here forever and I will never die. You will be anxious and you will be like, oh my God, if you don't have the maturity to understand the spiritual truth. So your ego helps you to understand or to believe that, hey, you are suffering right now, but at least you're going to die someday. So this is not eternal. You are not here forever. You are just in a brief window here. So that gives you a sense of, okay, I have a beginning, I have an end. I can understand a little bit more my existence, and I can, try to do the best that I can in my existence because it's gonna end. So that is thanks to the ego. Also, the ego gives you unstable motivation or unsustainable. It's kind of a fossil fuels. Like it gives energy, but it's a lot of a lot of pollution. Give me just a second. With fossil fuels, you have energy, but also pollution. Well, with ego, you can have motivation, but also you will be contaminated with desires, with ego stuff, with pain, suffering, conflicts. So, yes, you can be motivated by ego. I will win this. I am the best. I will be the best. I will conquer my enemies. That can give you motivation, but it's not sustainable. Only the spiritual, based on love, on consciousness type of motivation is sustainable. But your ego can give you a little bit of a motivation. Sometimes I use it. Sometimes I use the motivation of competition to drive myself. But I know that it's not sustainable. So I try to do it only when it's my last resource. And finally, the ego gives you a capacity for identification. Like if you go and watch a movie and the character like impact your heart a lot, you identified yourself with that character. That is the capacity of identification. And that is one of the most important psychological aspects of being an adolescent. When you are an adolescent, you are identifying yourself with people that you want to be like. And that helps you to orient the direction of your identity and the direction of your life and your career. So maybe you admire LeBron James, you can become identified with him, and you then can do similar things. Like you can maybe open a school, or maybe you can, lead a basketball team, like a junior basketball team, thinking about LeBron and following his steps, right? So ego gives you the chance to identify yourself with objects and people that can help your own ego to stretch potentialities in yourself. And that is also an angel of the ego. So now I ask you, it is the ego all bad as you thought? It is the ego absolutely evil as you thought? It is the ego absolutely anti-spiritual as you thought? I hope that you have a better answer right now. My conclusion is that the ego is necessary, but it must be transcended. So it is kind of a paradoxical truth as everything else in spirituality. So the ego is the enemy and at the same time is your friend. So the ego is the devil and at the same time is God. So the ego is evil and at the same time it is infinitely good. It is just the ego, you know. So what I want you to do now is just to exploit the capacities of the ego, exploit them, like capitalize them, get identified with better things, turn your ego into the universe, help your spirit to become more relentless in evolution, or I don't want to say evolution because the spirit doesn't evolve, but in your connection with it, like you are breaking the resistance that you have to connecting with your own ego, or sorry, with your own spirit, and use the power of your ego for the love of the world and the universe, for the benefit of the whole universe. And so remember that tomorrow I will be doing the part two, and we are going to discuss the demons of the ego, when the ego goes wrong, and how you can prevent that for happening to you. So stay tuned. Please leave a comment below and tell me what other angel I didn't mention that you can think about it, about the ego. Please share it with the community. I will be reading and I will be answering you. And believe me, the information that people provides is crucial because it complements what we are doing here. Also, share this with your friends. Share it in your social media if you want and if you can. That helps me a lot to spread the message. And remember that this podcast, you can fund this podcast by Patreon. All right. That is a platform that you can receive exclusive content if you just donate $5 per month. Just $5 per month. And you can help us, to continue transforming thousands of lives around the world with this free podcast. Also, remember that I will be launching a new offer on my new course on English version, the Self Love Masterclass. I already have it on Spanish, but I'm launching a special offer with the English course. All right. So if you want to, love yourself better, understand how to heal your self esteem, understand how to have a wonderful and beautiful relationship with yourself in self-love and consciousness, stay tuned to my social media for that offer. And also, I want to invite you to derekisrael.com. There you can see my coaching 101, my consulting. You can see the books that I will be launching, all the projects, and everything in the store. So visit derekisrael.com, and I see you in